Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Belle again, and welcome to The Roads with Belle. Today is September 7th, 2025, and this is episode 107 of The Roads Not Taken, which is a weekly series where we go over the news that was unreported, underreported, didn't get the coverage we thought it deserved, or we just found it interesting. And then we go through some questions from y'all. Today is September 7th, and today is National Neither Snow Nor Rain Day. So thank a postal worker. And on this date in 1813, Uncle Sam was first used to reference the United States. And starting with foreign policy, Trump has denied knowledge of a reported 2019 SEAL Team 6 incursion into North Korea that went horribly wrong. Not only failing in planting listening devices, but also reportedly taking out a boat full of North Korean civilians. It's not clear if he was simply denying the action because it's the diplomatic thing to do, or if he's legitimately forgotten about it. The U.S. destroyed a civilian boat from Venezuela that the administration says was a drug boat. The idea was clearly to engage in a show of force. Venezuela has responded by engaging in armed flybys of American naval vessels. If the United States hadn't just engaged in its attack, these flybys would be viewed as a major provocation and condemned internationally. As it stands, most experts are just glad they didn't respond and start a war. The U.S. is deploying a number of fighters to Puerto Rico for potential strikes on cartels. A U.S. judge ruled ending legal protections for Venezuelans and Haitians in the U.S. is unlawful. Ukrainian drones have continued to pound Russian refinery capacity. There is growing concern over Russia's economic stagnation. Israel is gearing up for another major offensive in Gaza. Experts suggest that moves in the West Bank may cause the Abraham Accords to fail. In U.S. news, the NRA came out in favor of trans rights. Well, kind of. They came out in favor of trans Second Amendment rights. Trump is reported to be currently looking at a way to try to bar trans people from owning firearms. The move is unlikely to make it through the legal challenges, but is obviously a worry for some. The NRA throwing their support here, assuming it lasts, might actually be a game changer in the debate. In another development, when asked about it, Trump didn't know anything about it. Guess he forgot or wasn't told about that either. After losing in California, Trump is now being sued by D.C. over his troop deployments. There's a pretty big push in Missouri to stop Trump's redistricting. Farmers in Arkansas are begging for federal help as the tariffs and Trump's trade war push more towards bankruptcy. I'd expect to see more of this. The Trump administration is using some mortgage documents from Fed Governor Lisa Cook as a reason to try to oust her. Reporting from Reuters and ProPublica is suggesting there are multiple members of the Trump administration or relatives who engaged in the same behavior. In cultural news, Pentagon officials are unhappy about Trump's change to Department of War. They're slamming it as a waste of money that doesn't help them counter China and that helps adversarial nations build propaganda about the U.S. Some are reportedly mocking the Secretary of Defense and Trump. There's a joke about renaming the Air Force the Army Air Corps. Sorry, that's funny to me. A plan is being floated that says if Musk increases the value of Tesla from just over $1 trillion now to $8.5 trillion over 10 years, he'll get about $1 trillion incentive payday. Sam Altman is apparently worried that dead internet theory is coming true. That's the theory that the internet is mostly populated by bots. In science news, After RFK Jr.'s disastrous hearing on Capitol Hill, Trump said his Health and Human Services Secretary, quote, means very well. Well, I'm sure that will be a great comfort to those being forced to sift through or combat his bizarre claims. His family is calling for him to resign. NASA's acting chief is reportedly angry over the idea that the Chinese will beat the U.S. back to the moon. In economic news, Trump may get his wish of lower interest rates because his policies appear to be crashing the job market. This isn't a case where Trump was right. It's a case where the Fed is desperately trying to stop stagflation that seems likely because of Trump's policies. Canada is providing billions in aid for tariff-hit industries. Some financial advisors are saying that Trump's trade war will end up boosting Canadian stocks. You're starting to get warning signs from some economists about an inflation mountain. So far, it all looks like a correlation, and I'm not sure it's predictive. We'll know in a few months. And if you want to see the concern, pull up a chart of the inflation rate from 1966 to 1982 and overlay it with 2014 to today, and then assume the pattern from the late 70s to early 80s continues until the early 2030s. And I just realized how complicated that sounds. I'll try to find a link. In oddities, Xi and Putin were caught on a hot mic talking about methods of prolonged lifespans. Speaker of the House Johnson randomly said Trump was an informant working against Epstein. That actually raised more questions than it answered. RFK Jr. seems to be saying that Tylenol is linked to autism. I'm sure Tylenol loves their brand name being used instead of, acetaminophen. I am sure there won't be any lawsuits in the future over this. On to the Q&A. Our first question. Do you think the proposed demilitarized zone in Ukraine would work with non-NATO countries? Would you be willing to commit troops of your nation to stand between two sides, when the whole reason that NATO troops won't work is because Russia plans on attacking again later? Honestly, any leader that commits their troops to this without NATO backing probably shouldn't be a leader. We got a number of questions about the legality of the strike on the Venezuela boat. The core question is, of course, was that legal? The short answer is, it depends. The long answer, per Just Security, is, quote, borrowing language from the post-9/11 global war on terror, the Trump administration is attempting to turn counter-narcotics missions into counter-terrorism operations. But applying a new label to an old problem does not transform the problem itself. Nor does it grant the U.S. president or the U.S. military expanded legal authority to kill civilians. So, it depends, but probably not. Some of this next series of questions were answered in a Thursday episode, but it's worth hitting all of them for continuity. If Congress allows the government to shut down, then what? What would be the experience during the shutdown? Large portions of the government would not be working. Lots of workers would be furloughed. It would cause some economic harm, but maybe less than leaving it open with Trump at the helm. What are the options about whether to start the government up again? Are politics different than avoiding the shutdown in the first place? Once a shutdown starts, they just need to pass a spending bill to restart the government. The big difference in the politics is the attempt to place the blame of the shutdown on the other party. Would a shutdown attract and retain the attention of low information, irrational voters long enough to inform them about what's going on? Maybe. They'd be the first to assign blame. If you had some of the more charismatic Democrats get out there and really push it, it might get through. By the midterms, would it make any difference whether we had a shutdown or not? Oh, it depends on other events. Something could overshadow it, or it could be the biggest topic. Either's possible. The real question that Democrats have to decide is whether or not they think the economy will tank before the midterms. If they think it will, they'll want to avoid a shutdown and let the Republicans totally own the economy. If they think it'll hold, then they might risk a shutdown. Does a pocket rescission violate the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974? If so, and assuming that Republicans would never promise to impeach Trump out of office, much less do it, what actually could the Republicans in Congress offer to the Democrats in order to restart the government? This is an open legal question. My personal opinion is that it does violate the Impoundment Act and the U.S. Constitution that places the budgeting power in the hands of Congress, not the president. Once the ruling is in place from the Supreme Court, then federal agencies will be unlikely to comply with another Trump order like this. So, that looks like it. A little more information, a little more context, and having the right information will make all the difference. Y'all have a good day.